So, Pat, our next topic for today is Nevada Athletic Commission seems to be on one when it comes to marijuana. They have suspended Jamal Hill, Tim Elliott, and Louis Pena testing positive for marijuana metabolites. However, scientifically, you want to phrase that. But anyway, these their suspensions have been extended temporarily due to COVID-19. The commission isn't having its regular schedule of hearings. That's another story for another day. But as far as the issue itself, marijuana suspensions, why are we still doing this, Pat?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially because if I'm not mistaken, marijuana is legal in Nevada, right?
It's very,
That's
very legal in Nevada. It's dispensaries everywhere, encouraged even in Nevada.
right. So the fact that we're doing this is, you know, this just goes to a throwback. The Nevada State Athletic Commission has always hated marijuana. Like, I mean, if we go back to Nick Diaz and that insane 5-year suspension, to the point where you got, my favorite part about that whole thing was that Cher got involved and tweeted like free Nick Diaz, which was just amazing to me. Because it's just why. But when we talk about like the fact that we're still talking about marijuana being an in competition drug failure when it's legal in the state, it makes no sense. The laws are antiquated. It's fighters aren't using it to get high and go in there and fight high. And I forget which referee said this, but I remember one of the referees, I think maybe it was Big John, I'm not sure, chimed in saying, yes, if the fighter is impaired, if they just got really high before the fight and they're impaired, then it's a danger to their health. Totally understand that. But if it's, marijuana metabolites stay in your system for a while, and if it's, I got high a week before my fight and it's or after it in order to heal, because that's what a lot of fighters use it for, is for inflammation, it shouldn't make a difference, especially when it's legal. So the fact that we're doing this is just, I don't know if it's someone has just a vendetta against the ganja on the Nevada State Athletic Commission, or if it's just they really hate Tim Elliott, Jamal Hill, and Luis Pena. But there is no reason that this should be a thing. It's ridiculous. I hope they appeal those suspensions. I hope they're all overturned. I don't know what else to say, because the fact we're talking about this in 2020 is mind blowing.
All right, and this is typically this carries a 6-month suspension, first time marijuana offense for Nevada Athletic Commission, and I think it's a fine point to bring up the state's stance on marijuana, because it is very readily accessible in Nevada, throughout the entire state, especially in Las Vegas. You can very easily get your hands on some if you so desire, and not have to worry about a cop over your shoulder as a result. So, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I do remember some reports that came out maybe a year and a half ago, something like that, where at least one of the commissioners, one person who sits on the state athletic commission, actually owns dispensaries and has investments into that industry. So something isn't lining up here. And also, when you think about the testing for marijuana itself, it's not something like cocaine stays in your system for such a short amount of time, that if you test positive for cocaine, you clearly did it within a very narrow window. And even with certain performance enhancing drugs, same sort of thing. They are in and out of your system, least traceable in and out of your system within several, anywhere from 12 hours to 36 hours, something like that, or 3 days tops, depending on your build and whatnot. Now, the thing with marijuana is you can't tell from the tests when someone ingested the substance. So it's not like you have any reliable way to discern whether or not someone was impaired, other than the referee, any cage side physicians, or any other commission officials that are checking hand wraps and making sure that nothing strange is going on backstage. They are the line of defense for that, to see if a fighter is impaired. So I'm just not quite understanding why this is still a thing, and especially too recently, and this is something that we should have touched on in our previous segment about the last UFC card kind of falling to disaster with so many fights falling off. Eric Spicely, who was slated to be on that card, botched his weight cut, was removed from the card, and when he discussed this afterward, this was about antidepressants. This was about prescription drugs that he took to kind of deal with some of the damage that he took in his last fight against Deron Winn. Now, fighters use marijuana in place of things like that. So let's weigh what exactly would we rather have. Would we rather have these fighters doing a substance that only mentally affects you for for a couple hours or so, something that also helps your inflammation, something that relaxes you, something that's also natural, and doesn't necessarily destroy a weight cut, destroy a fight? Or do you want to have antidepressants? Do you want to have prescription painkillers, things that, like Carl Parisian, derailed his career? So what exactly are we aiming for? Are we aiming to make sure the fighter's in the best shape they can be going into the cage? Or are we trying to follow some archaic rules about the devil's lettuce? I don't know what exactly is the priority here, but I thought the priority for a state athletic commission was to sanction a fight for the safety and well-being of the athletes involved. Correct me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And again, there is the devil's advocate argument of, well, this was the rule and they knew it was the rule and they broke it. You could go that route if you want to. Okay. Like, yeah, but at the same time, it's again, even if that's the case, even if that is the rule and all of that, the fact of the matter is as you said, there is no exact timeline of when they took marijuana, right? It's not like okay, you had this much, unless I don't know what type of test they're doing for it, but even then, I think to really determine when you had just smoked, you need something pretty scientific that's not happening right now.
Yeah, the closest they can do, as far as I know, still is a hair test.
Right?
And that can determine to an approximate, but not to the precision you need to say, hey, you were high going into the cage. When that fighter is passing through a sea of commission officials who are looking at him, evaluating him and all of his movements, his or her movements, and they are sitting there evaluating everything and observing every single thing. If that fighter gets past them,
yes, then
I think they have passed the test.
Yeah.
Or your commission guys not doing their job?
Yeah. And
one without the other. I'm sorry.
No, and I'm with you there, and I agree. It's an archaic law that or rule really that needs to be changed. Will it get changed? I'm not sure. I don't know what to tell the fighters, because as you said, there are other options out there, but some of them have very detrimental effects, like Eric Spicely, and the antidepressant issue, or painkillers like Carlos Parisian. Like that's huge, and marijuana does not have that effect. So I know some fighters have been advocating hard for this. I know Elias Theodorou was very big in getting, trying to get that. And I believe in Canada, the Canadian Athletic Commissions, if I'm not mistaken, he got that done, where now it's yeah. And so that's really where things need to change. I believe in the US, they need to adopt that. It makes sense. It's mostly used again for inflammation and for pain that you get after getting beat up. It's not, I'm getting high and going in there dangerous and, I'm looking to be impaired. I'm not, like, I can't think of why a fighter would go in there blazed out of his mind and think, okay, I'm going to be a better fighter today. Like, so I don't.
Not how that works.
No. It's
just,
yeah.
No. I worked briefly a short-lived show. Did enjoy that. Unfortunately, it was rather short-lived. But anyway, the premise of the show was a sit-down interview with fighters about marijuana, and the Jordan Colbert, who was one of my colleagues, one of our colleagues at SureDog, when we were both there. He would interview the guys. Well, Leslie Smith and Louis Pena were the two that he did the episodes on. But anyway, you sit there, they're smoking, and they're just talking about marijuana intertwined with their fight life. And for both athletes, it was like, hey, I got beat up in training. This takes the edge off. I'm not in pain. I'm able to relax my nerves, and it, very, very wholesome goals, in a way that isn't, tied in with opioids. So I'm not quite certain what they're looking for, but if they're looking to protect fighter interests, leave weed alone.
Yeah. And I think there's, are they looking to protect fighter interests? I feel like depending on the athletic commission, some members may be, some members may not be. Who knows? It's hard to say, especially in Nevada. That's a tough one, to be honest. If I'm being blunt in terms of are they really looking out for fighter interest? And, in this situation, it's clear that, in my opinion, that letting marijuana go, it makes perfect sense. So will it ever happen? I feel like Nevada would be one of the last commissions to adopt that rule. I could see it literally being similar to adopting the unified rule set, how that's split. I could see a measure passing where several commissions allow it and several don't. My guess would be Nevada would be one of the ones that don't. But it's, that's where the UFC is that's where the UFC headquarters is. That's where they have the T-Mobile fights, where the Apex is.
The biggest fights are,
Yeah, it's so unfortunately. Yeah. And unfortunately for the fighters, it's just something, going forward, you probably have to find an alternative, because you don't want to get your fight. I don't believe they're overturning any fights, but you're getting a suspension, but who knows? Because I guess they still have to actually go before the board and all of that as well. So
they've softened their stance over the years. They have, because like the aforementioned Nick Diaz fiasco, like we've seen them grandstand about marijuana before. I think back to, and I correct me if I'm wrong, if this wasn't in Nevada, but Pat Healy, he had like the performance of a lifetime thing, defeating Jim Miller. And
yes,
he got the fight of the night bonus, got the submission of the night bonus, and then it all was unraveled because he smoked weed a week before or something like that. So they have softened their stance to an extent, but it's still not good enough. It's still not good enough that athletes who otherwise are following all the rules are punished for doing something to protect their own well-being in as safe a way as they can. Just doesn't make much sense to me at all. And actually I chalk it up a lot to Nevada. Nevada has had some strings of hypocrisy in the past that I've been kind of vocal about, and on other platforms. I can think back to the aftermath of UFC 229, where they were threatening to take pay-per-view money away from McGregor and Khabib, and insisting that they do their hearings in person and they're together to have the show to sort of to grandstand unnecessarily, and and then to have the Floyd Mayweather and Pacquiao, the comments that they were at least one of them was lobbing at the other, and Adrian, I think actually it was Adrian Bronner and Pacquiao, their fight, and some racist language that was used in the build up to
Yes.
that, and how they were doing such a bad job they were saying they were going to police trash talk, but if the fight made enough money, oh, we'll let it slide. That sort of hypocrisy. That I think this is just another case of Nevada being Nevada. So leave the guys alone for weed.
Yeah. I mean, it's well, and you bring up a really good point about, it's Pat Healy is one example. I know Kevin Gastelum had beaten Vitor Belfort, and that got overturned. And even in these situations, right? None of these guys are right now on a title contention path. I know Tim Elliott's win was big because it kind of got him back in the win column, and flyweight is he's a staple of that division, so you never know where that could go. But another thing to think about is imagine this is a number one contender fight. Imagine this is Whitaker versus Cannonier, and Cannonier goes out there, dominates Whitaker, or vice versa. Whitaker just smokes him, puts on a performance, guarantees that title shot, and then they got pulled for weed, and then it got overturned. And that derails, right? Do they still get the title shot? Who knows? Gives UFC leverage to not give them the title shot. Yeah, So it's this is, if they end up overturning contests because of this, that's massive. It's these are fighters' livelihoods, and it does make a difference. And I'm with you. Weed needs to be left alone. There's better things Nevada needs to do, like not show fighter purses or anything of that nature, right? Because that's gone too. So, yeah. But I will refute that marijuana can definitely mess up your weight cut, because I know I've tried to lose weight a couple times, and then I smoke and I eat like 5 pizzas and I gain weight. So
yeah, I found myself at a diner at 3 a.m. with stacks of pancakes and cheese eggs, and wash it all down with a milkshake. I've been there.
So it's not, but you're just looking out for fighter safety, man. You got to make sure, don't want a fighter doing that while they're cutting weight. And
before we wrap this up, I should point out one error on my part. The Pat Healy and Jim Miller fight did not happen in Nevada. It was actually in New Jersey.
Oh, well, you go.
It still stands.
Yeah. No, it does. And did the Kevin Gastelum fight happen in Nevada? No, that was in Brazil. That's right. Yeah, that was in Brazil. Yeah. Okay. Well, point still stands. The Nick Diaz thing happened in Nevada. So that's, and they tried to give him 5 years. So
bad Nevada. Go to your room.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That happened.
Yeah.